Hello everyone, this is Agustina Dalla Torre and Adriana Olivares. We are here to present this work, which is related to the academic oral presentation. We're going to deal with and show you its generic macrostructure potential. We are from Mendoza, Argentina. Okay, let's start. Okay, we are basing our work, or this work has begun in a previous research project in 2019, which was called Literature from a Linguistic Perspective, Modeling and Teaching of Literary Narrative Genres and Response Genres. In this project, we worked with the first generic structure potential, macrostructural potential of the academic representations. And at the moment we are working with the second project, which is the second stage, let's say, which is called Macro Genres, Short Story and Academic Oral Presentations, Insights into the Generic Macrostructural Potential and Lexicogrammatical Realizations of Their Constituents. So these two projects had been directed by Grisel Salmazo, so she's the head of the project. Myself, Agustina La Torre, I'm the co-head, and Adriana Olivares, Professor Adriana Olivares, the member of our team, along with Amparo Argerich, Emilia Moreski, other teachers from the House of Studies, and Mauro Constantini, Gonzalo Dominguez, and Jasmine Matar, who are students from Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, Universidad Nacional de Cuyo. The corpus that we have been working with, it's produced by students in the subjects English Language 3 and English Language 4 at the teaching, training, translation, and research courses of studies of Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, Universidad Nacional de Cuyo, Mendoza, Argentina. Okay, our theoretical framework is systemic functional linguistics. We work with the notion of the generic structure potential, Hassan, 1996. We work with the notion of genre, Martin and Rose, 2007, and with the definition of Martin, 1994, of macro genre. We go further. We develop a little bit this definition, since this project considers short stories and academic representations as macro genres, since they are a combination of elementary genres that occurs in an iterative way and with a certain frequency, so can be captured in a generic macrostructure potential. We also work with narrative genres or categories of narrative instances, such as recount, anecdote, narrative, example, and observation. Authors like Bloom, Martin and Rose, and Salmazo, and with response genres, such as personal response and interpretation used in oral productions from Rotary. So this project has two big aims, and one is to go deeper into the modeling of the generic macrostructure potential, the one that we have already stated or proposed in the previous project, of both macro genres, short stories and academic oral representations. And our second aim is to carry out a thorough lexical grammatical analysis and of both genres, short stories and academic representations, both macro genres, I mean. In the case of short stories, so the analysis is focused on transitivity patterns. And in the case of the macro genre academic representation, the analysis is centered on thematic patterns and thematic progression. So both analyses tend to or aim to show a correlation between the generic macrostructure proposed and the findings at the lexicogrammatical level. But the aims of today's presentation, well, is to work with academic oral presentations and is to present the generic macrostructural potential of these academic oral presentations resulting from a quantitative and qualitative analysis of 13 presentations produced by students at Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, Universidad Nacional de Cuyo, Mendoza, Argentina, to present 4 macro constituents of the macro genre and their purpose: announcement, contextualization, analysis, statement; to present the micro constituents present in the macro constituents and the inserted genres that we have found; and to illustrate the generic macrostructure of the academic oral presentation.
Okay, so we are going to start by defining these 4 macro constituents, their purpose, and the different micro constituents that may be inserted in each of them. So the first one, the announcement, and well, we can say that the purpose of the announcement is to announce the main idea of the presentation and to state the purpose of it, the purpose of this presentation. This macro constituent may have 2 different micro constituents, one that is obligatory and then the non-obligatory micro constituents. Within the obligatory micro constituents, we can find the announcement of the topic, the announcement of the purpose of the presentation, and the announcement of the source text. While in the non-obligatory elements, we can find the greeting and announcement of the name of the presenter, for example, the justification of choice of topic and source text, generally done by a personal response, and the announcement of the organization of the presentation. As I said before, these are the non-obligatory elements that may be part of the announcement. Then we can continue with the contextualization, and the purpose of the contextualization is to state a connection between the topic and the text the presentation is based on. The micro constituents present in this macro constituent, again, can be, we can divide them into the obligatory and non-obligatory. Within the obligatory micro constituent, we can find the contextualization of the source text. This contextualization of the source text may be realized through inserted genres: an observation, a descriptive report, a description, plot summary, or theme summary. In the non-obligatory elements, we can find the contextualization of the topic. And the contextualization of the topic, in this case, if present, may be realized through inserted genres such as descriptive report, or description, or definition. The third macro constituent that we are going to define is the analysis. The purpose of the analysis is to provide a careful evaluation or a careful analysis of the points covered in the presentation in relation to the topic and the source text. This analysis can be presented by means of an interpretation or an exposition, according to the different analyses we have done so far. In the case of the interpretation, the purpose is to demonstrate that one is able to read the message of the text and respond to the cultural values presented in the narrative. This definition was provided by Roderick in 1994, and the interpretation may have 3 different constituents: the evaluation, the synopsis, and the reaffirmation. In the case of the synopsis, this synopsis can be presented by means of a descriptive report, an anecdote, or an example. The exposition, that can be the second, the other way in which the analysis may be carried out, has a different purpose. And the purpose of the exposition is to persuade the reader to agree with the case argued by the speaker on the basis of particular beliefs or values. using again Roderick's definition in 1994. In the case of the exposition, the constituents may be the thesis, the argument, and the reinforcement of the thesis. The argument can be presented by an anecdote, a historical recount, a plot summary, or a theme summary. And to finish with the description of the macro constituents, we can explore the notions of the restatement. And the main purpose of the restatement, that is the rounding off, we can say, is to recapitulate what has been developed, helping the audience to grasp the meaning of the entire presentation. The restatement, again, has an obligatory element that is like the rounding off of the ideas covered in the presentation, and the non-obligatory elements, but that can be present, like, for example, a personal comment reflecting on the importance of the presentation to better understand the story or the topic that has been developed, a call to action, like a comment encouraging the audience to take action about a problem. So the 4 macro constituents developed so far are the ones that represent the structure of the academic oral presentation.
So this would be the linear representation of the generic macrostructure potential of the academic oral presentation that Adriana has just explained. We have the announcement as the first macro constituent, the contextualization, the analysis, and the restatement, along with the non-obligatory and obligatory micro-constituents inside. Also, some of them realized by means of inserted jargons, such as observation, descriptive report, and other types of texts, such as plot summary and theme summary.
And now we are going to present a sample of an academic oral presentation. In this particular case, we analyzed a presentation provided by a Language 3 student in the year 2021. And this presentation was recorded so we can obtain the full script of the presentation and analyze it in detail. The source text of this presentation was The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. The topic of the presentation was post-traumatic stress syndrome. And the purpose of this particular presentation was to demonstrate how the author, Stephen Chbosky, describes his main character as a man suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome through the letters that the main character writes. The generic structure, as we can see here, the 4 different macro constituents present in this presentation are the announcement, the contextualization, the analysis, and the reaffirmation. Within the analysis, the student first greets the audience and introduces herself. She introduces and announces the source text she has chosen to work with, that in this particular case was The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, as I mentioned before, and the topic of her presentation, that, as we read in the previous slide, was post-traumatic stress syndrome. She justifies her choice by including a personal response to the text. And finally, she states the purpose of the presentation. As we read before, the purpose was to demonstrate how the author described the main character suffering from this post-traumatic stress syndrome. And this is done by the letters that he writes. Within the contextualization, we can see that the student includes the 2 micro-constituents, the obligatory and the non-obligatory elements, okay? So the contextualization of the source text that was realized by a plot summary, and a contextualization of the topic that was realized by a definition, post-traumatic stress syndrome. She defines it. And then within the analysis, the student conducts this analysis by including an exposition. She chose the exposition to present the analysis. The thesis was that the main character suffers from post-traumatic stress syndrome. And what she does in the rest of the analysis is to present the different arguments and to reinforce each argument once the argument was presented and described. The first argument was presented by an anecdote, and we can see the reinforcement of the argument. The second argument with its respective reinforcement. The same with argument 3 and argument 4. At the end of this analysis, she reinforces the whole thesis. She rounds off the whole analysis. And finally, she closes the presentation, rounding up ideas and including a personal response to the text and the topic. She responds to the text and the presentation by including a personal response.
So here we have the linear representation of the generic macrostructure of the example in this case. So the academic representation presents an announcement, some obligatory microconstituents, the contextualization with the contextualization of the topic as present, including a definition. Then the macroconstituent analysis realized through an exposition with each argument and reinforcement of arguments, as Adriana explained. And finally, as the closing macroconstituent, the restatement, realized by a personal response of the student to the text and the topic. Okay, so we can draw some conclusions. Well, one is that the presentation, the academic oral presentation, is a macro genre, and it presents 4 macro constituents: the announcement, the contextualization, the analysis, and the restatement, as Adriana has just exemplified. Regarding the announcement, well, we can say that the justification of choice of source text and topic, which is a non-obligatory microconstituent, may be realized through the response genre personal response. We can say that there can be 2 different contextualizations. I mean, within the contextualization, we have 2 microconstituents: the contextualization of topic, which is non-obligatory, and the contextualization of the source text, which is obligatory, and both may be realized through inserted genres such as descriptive reports. Within the contextualization, if the analysis of the whole presentation is conducted including an exposition, there must be a contextualization of the topic to be argued about. And, well, regarding the analysis, this obligatory macroconstituent must be realized through these different genres, which are interpretation or exposition. If it is conducted by interpretation, there must be the 3 obligatory stages: evaluation, synopsis, reaffirmation. And this genre may present inserted genres in the stage synopsis, such as descriptive report, anecdote, example, maybe some different types of text that we acknowledge that they are not considered genre itself, but the case of plot summary can be an option too, as we have been mentioned before. And another option is to include in the analysis the exposition genre. And in this case, the different constituents would be thesis, argument, reinforcement of thesis. And again, the argument may present inserted genres, such as an anecdote. In the case of the restatement, this macro constituent may present a personal response as an inserted genre. This idea of the student responding to the whole presentation or to the topic chosen. And, well, we can also say that inserted genres help fulfill the purpose of each macro constituent. So, for example, the exposition contributes to fulfill the purpose of the macro constituents, which is analysis. Here we have our references, and thank you so much. Okay, we are very welcome to receive questions, doubts, and we're very happy for having been able to share ideas with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.